Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Conservative, not bitter indeed, my friends. It is a pleasure to be here, and boy, do I have a lot of things that I would like to get to on today's program. It is a lengthy list on this, the 100th day that Trump has been in office, and it's my pleasure to be here. I'll share my thoughts about that. Let me just give you a quick sampling here of some of the things in the stack of stuff. This is a hat tip to the late, great Rush Limbaugh. Let's see here. You may have seen over the weekend, the NFL draft, Shedeur Sanders was drafted. He was supposed to be a top 5 pick. That was what all of the experts said. Because of his interviews, because of his lack of showing up to work out at the combine, because of some of the demands he had of teams and all of the things, he dropped down the list. In fact, he wasn't picked until I think it was pick 144. I actually saw the pick happen, my friends. Representative Jamal Bowman, you might remember him as the individual who pulled the fire alarm, blames white people for his fall. Governor Pritzker's out there telling people in Illinois, telling his supporters that he's in favor of making sure Republicans have no peace, doing his best to channel the inner Maxine Waters. In fact, maybe that's Governor Waters for all I know. Spartacus is out there doing it yet again, my friends. Protesting, being a Dramacrat on the nation's capital, looking like a junior high sit-in. That's something else that's out there. We've got the deep state that's been caught on camera defying Trump's orders, which of course is illegal, and of course is also proof that there is such a thing as a deep state. My goodness, there's so many things here. Trump was interviewed by The Atlantic. There's some things about that out there. Bernie's admitting that the Democrats have no vision. MSNBC blurs some signs. This is what I want to start with. Blurs signs of illegal immigrants. I'll explain all this. They blur out the, you could say mugshots, but they're not. They're pictures of these illegal aliens who Trump and his administration have accused of being all sorts of things, murderers and everything else, that have lined the White House yard, which I'll talk about. That's where I want to start. But friends, before I get there, before we get rocking and rolling too far here today, let me tell you, we are engaged in this ideological battle in this country. One side's going to have to win this, and hopefully the side of truth and the Constitution and conservatism and liberty, we win. Traditional Western thought and values, hopefully this side wins what we're out here talking about each and every day. But I got to tell you, from a bit of a selfish perspective, we need all of the folks pushing in the same direction as possible, so you got to take care of yourself. That's where Solti comes in. Solti has been clinically proven to lower cholesterol, can help give you a healthy heart. It's done it for countless others. It can do the same for you as well. And if you go to their website, Solti.com, S-O-L-T-E-A, that's Solti.com, and use my name, Todd, during the checkout process, you're going to get a great deal, 50% off, and free shipping on your first 3-month supply. You've got nothing to lose but those high cholesterol numbers. Take care of yourselves. Friends, as I've aged, this has become more and more important to me. I think you should consider it as well. Solti.com, promo code Todd, get you the special pricing. All right, let's start here. Let's paint a little bit of a picture as to what's going on. The White House had some coroplast signs printed. So just a little bit of a quick tidbit. Before I had this program, we had a company that produced various products, things with logos, and apparel and hats and everything else. In fact, we sold that company, and we're at the end of our non-compete deal. And that's something we're looking to offer, again, as we get out of that non-compete time, to folks again. But be that as it may, I'm just familiar with this because of my background. These are coroplast signs. They're yard signs. These are the signs, political signs, or if you can imagine, signs that a company might put up in someone's yard after they did some work at a house. You might see a heating and cooling contractor do it, or a well company. We installed a product here at this house. Ask them about it, sort of thing. We can help you too. So normally you'll see the signs, they run horizontally. These are printed so they run vertically. So you got the metal H stake, you put it in the ground. This is, by the way, this is at the White House. So this is at the White House. They have a series of these signs that are printed and that they've staked in the White House lawn, what I consider, I guess, the front side of the White House. The side that I would say most people, you can get closer to this side. Most people are familiar with this side. So they got these signs lined up, and it's pictures. You may have seen this on social media. There are pictures of people who are illegal aliens that have been arrested. That's what they say at the top. They say arrested. It's got a photo of the individual, and it's got the charge underneath. Lewd acts in front of a child. MS-13 member and homicide. Sexual assault. I'm reading the pictures. I'm looking at murder, homicide. I don't know why we have murder. Anyway, so they got these lined up, and they've got them. I'm telling you, they're almost touching. There's 100, I don't know, there's dozens of these signs, and they are on the White House property. Now, what's interesting here is that these signs, which were put there on the 99th day. Today's Trump's 100th day, which we'll talk a little bit about. But these signs are placed in an area that is directly behind where journalists stand when they are reporting from the White House. Now, I was a student at American University in 1999. I went to Butler. It was just a semester program. I didn't transfer to AU or anything like that. It was a semester program that was connected to the university, so I spent a semester in D.C., and I would spend a lot of my weekends walking around and seeing the city, the monuments, just exploring the area. Lots of history. I love D.C. Forget about, I don't like the swampy part of it. Some of the things that have become the status quo for that city, but I love the city. There's so much history. It's pretty. It's just really, it's a really neat place. It's one of the birthplaces. I mean, you could say Philadelphia and Washington, D.C., birthplace of our nation. This became our nation's capital. It has special significance to me. I remember the first time when my parents dropped me off in Washington, D.C. We drove down, and I could see the Capitol Rotunda in the background. The first time I saw that, I just remember, that's etched in my memory. It's a beautiful city. So I'd walk around, I would see the city. I would walk past the White House, and I would see a row of journalists, make-believe journalists, of course. This is where they would stand. It's kind of off to the side of the White House, and they would often, because the camera shot, it's kind of downhill, I guess, a little bit from the White House. The cameraman or the person responsible for framing the shot would say, hey, we need to get you a little bit higher. So they would be standing on something, right? Standing on suitcases or boxes. I don't know what they were, step stools, whatever, to get a better angle with the White House in the background. I remember seeing this as a 21-year-old kid, not really familiar with, that was how they did it back then. They still do that today. But this is the spot. This is why I bring this up. This is the spot as to where these signs are located. And they've got these signs so close together that if you're a journalist, these are guaranteed to be in the background. And now as I'm saying this, these signs are printed, typically you see these signs printed horizontally. These are printed vertically. And I'm guessing the reason they printed them vertically is because it made them harder to get out of your shot. If they were horizontal, they would be a few inches lower because, you make them wider than they are tall. So they've printed these vertically to get in the background of these journalist shots. Now, it's with that in mind Now I welcome you to MSNBC. In fact, so yesterday morning, 7 a.m., I did not know this the last time we were together because I hadn't seen this until after the program. But Caroline Leavitt just posts a video of this. I guess she or one of the people on the media team are just walking down along these signs, just recording them. I can't play it for you because there's no audio, but I've got a post here on X. And all the tweet says is good morning from the White House. Remember this, they're celebrating. They're trying to get out in front of this 100th day of Trump being in office, right? They want to set the tone. They want to make sure that people know here's where we were 100 days ago. Here's where we are now. Here's where we're going. Here are people who are a danger and a threat to your society that the previous administration did absolutely nothing about. They didn't care about. In fact, the previous administration is responsible for the vast majority, heck, I don't know, maybe all of those people that are on those pictures, potentially, I don't know, a large percentage of them even being in the country to begin with. If what Trump is doing now as it pertains to the to border security and deportations, if that was being done under the previous administration, the charges that are on these signs probably wouldn't even exist because these things would never have happened because these folks would have not been in this country. So that's what's going on here. And so these journalists at MSNBC, oh yes, they're worked up about this. They are fired up. They are saddened about this because they don't like these signs being in the background. So what did they do? You know what they did? They blurred the faces. I kid you not. They blurred the faces, MSNBC did, of the quote-unquote mug shots. Again, they're not, a lot of them are just photos. Because they say, look, these folks, these are just accusations from the White House. They haven't been found guilty. This is a whole problem here. They've not had their due process. Again, they're conflating things. They're trying to confuse you. Due process for being convicted of a homicide is not the same thing as the due process for deportations. Those are not the same thing, and you don't have to be guilty of homicide in order to be deported from this country. If you are here illegal, I've been through this countless times, my friends. You know this. I know you know this. But the folks in the media do not. Well, they might. They don't care. It goes against the narrative. Trump bad. Trump can't be seen in favorable light. Problem is, he is being seen in a favorable light. More and more people are jumping on the Trump train here. More and more people are happy with what they're saying. More and more people are behind what Trump is doing. And that, my friends, is a good thing. So the left here, the leftists over at MSNBC, they whine and moan about this a little bit. I'm going to play this soundbite. Just listen to this nonsense that they're out here spewing at MSNBC as they talk about how offensive it is to have these signs in the background and why, candidly, they blurred the faces out. And dare I add this, Oz and I were talking about this really briefly this morning. Dare I say this as well? Do you remember when Trump had his mugshot? Didn't the media act all too pleased to get that thing out on the television, out in social media? They wanted it to look like Trump was a convicted felon. You can't have a convicted felon as a president of the United States. This is a guy that's done all sorts of bad things. Yeah, he's not been tried yet, but we all know he's guilty. He's been charged. He's got his mugshot. Trump turned that mugshot, by the way, into a wonderful fundraising tool, into a wonderful tool to position himself to argue that the government, the deep state, was coming after him through lawfare. These things absolutely have been beneficial to Trump. We talked about this at the time. We talked about how this could be used to Trump's advantage. These folks were desperate. They were trying to take him down any way possible. They failed miserably. Their desire to get even and to take him out has been exposed for all the world to see, anyone who cares to see it. Now they're upset, feigning outrage, whatever, over these signs being in the background of their media shot at the White House. I just want you to listen to this exchange at MSNBC.
White House has put up about 100 posters of what they say are unauthorized immigrants
They got them blurred
who've been
out here.
arrested for violent crimes. You can see them there. They put them up on the driveway of the White House. If you look here, that's the West Wing just at the forefront, the executive mansion itself to the left. But what's particularly noteworthy about this location is it is right directly behind the positions where TV correspondents do their hits from the White House lawn.
Hits,
so therefore,
hits is the right word here. Hits on the Trump administration. There's no doubt that they're running hits on the administration here. This is one of the parts of this report I can actually stand beside. This is actually true. This is where they put him right behind the journalists. And I love it. I love this. See, this is good political theater, as opposed to Spartacus engaging in a 25-hour, whatever it was, make-believe filibuster. In comparison to Spartacus sitting on the steps of the Capitol. This is good. Journalists can't get around this. Journalists have to blur the faces out of people. Now, I just remember, as they're talking, this goes on here for a minute, as they're talking about how offended they are by this, how troubling this is, how there's no evidence and all of this sort of stuff. Remember, these folks have been arrested. They're illegal aliens. And just compare this to how they, the media, covered Trump's mugshot being out there. Just compare this to how they talked about Trump being a felon, even when he was just charged with the crimes he was charged with. Keep this in mind when you think about how they cover any other time someone was arrested and the media discussed it for whatever reason. Why go to the lengths to protect these folks to the degree that you're blurring out their faces? He continues
what network you're on, that includes MSNBC. If you're doing a hit from the White House right now, those pictures will be behind you. The White House doing a briefing in about a half hour about what they're doing here. Maria, your response to this image.
So I have to say, one of the biggest challenges.
So now that he goes to one of his leftist cohorts here, one of his leftists who's engaged in the make-believe journalism that's being conducted there at MSNBC. This, by the way, her name is Maria Teresa Kumar. She's got some things to say about this. But I just want you to listen to how this is portrayed. This is rich. This is good political
that we have with the deportations that we know of so far. For example, with Kilmer Abrego Garcia, we don't know if they've had due process. We don't know if, in fact, these individuals do have a rap sheet. So I would encourage those individuals that have that as a backshot to blur those people out.
Blur them out.
The job of journalism is to ensure.
Stop it. Now she's going to lecture us about journalism. This gets even richer. But may I remind you, due process, what is she talking about? Here in my county, this is a small town USA. If you get pulled over for a DUI, at least it used to be, I don't know today, but it used to go into the paper. It used to be broadcast on one of the local radio stations here. I don't know if they still do that or not. But they have reports. They report on things in the public. Stevie Smith was pulled over the weekend on charges of DUI. What does it have to do with due process? So the arresting officer, the officer that pulled the individual over, filed a report, and they said this person is suspected of DUI. It doesn't mean that the person is convicted of drunken driving. It simply means that that's what happened. As a matter of fact, the government, the officer, the one who's an officer of the government there, the law enforcement officer, assumed, based upon his or her investigation, that this person was likely driving under the influence. And so that goes out in the papers. What does this have to do? It's got your name. It's got all that stuff. What is she talking about due process? What is she talking? She doesn't know what she's talking about. Now she's going to lecture us about journalism. Now she's going to tell us the role of journalism. Remember, this is these are the folks who have, for the past 4 years, paid zero attention to the previous administration as far as Biden's ability to have any sense of mental awareness whatsoever. They didn't care about that. They didn't talk about that. In fact, if it was brought up, they told you how splendidly brilliant the guy was. They told you this guy was a rapid fire in one-on-one meetings. They saw no sign of any sort of decline. He was standing for long periods of time. That became one of the obvious ways in their delusional worldview to talk about the former president as though he was capable. He was standing up all day. My goodness. My grandmother was a hairdresser. She was on her feet all the time. Hairdressers do that sort of thing. And it's not easy to do. In fact, they often suffer from some things that are caused by those long amounts of time on your feet. Didn't suddenly qualify her to be anything. It just meant that she was on her feet all day, and that was the end of the story, and she dealt with it. And I think Biden should have too. He shouldn't have been lifted up as some mentally fit candidate or official in our government because he could stand on his feet all day. These are the same media that have no interest whatsoever about anything that could possibly put their candidate in a negative light. Now she's going to lecture us on what the media is supposed to be doing.
We are presenting the facts.
Presenting the facts.
That we are cross-referencing. We know that PolyFact actually checked the Trump administration because of an earlier picture that they released on Kilmer, recognizing that it was altered, that it was false, that they had placed gang signs, tattoos on him that weren't real.
I don't know if that's true. Is that
so
true?
would really, the press right now, we are absolutely under attack.
Oh, stop
Our
it.
job is always to have our true north.
I can't. True north? You wouldn't know true north if it smacked you up the side of the head. You have got to be kidding me. You have got to be. It is too early for me to be subjected to this sort of nonsensical gibberish here. True north in the media, those are antithetical terms. Those things don't mean the same thing that you think they do, or you are living under a delusion, because those things are about as far divorced from one another as humanly possible. What on earth are you talking about? True north? Getting alternate sources? How many times has the media cited one unnamed source? Or better yet, they go to the same source to confirm the source that was unnamed. The same source might be the named and unnamed source, and that's two sources. Do not lecture us on any of this. You are absolutely ridiculous for saying these things. This is a comedic act here. This is sophistry. This is make-believe journalism at its finest. They're defending it, and she's out here saying that they have been targeted. The press, the media is under attack. What a bunch of wimps and professional deceivers. I've got to take a break, my friends. More to say on this on the other side of the break. Sit tight. Back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. I cannot believe the nonsense we were just subjected to here by Ms. Kumar. She says our job is always to have our true north, to make sure that we're presenting balanced news and making sure that we are not putting folks that are potentially in danger. I'm going to back this up a little bit so you can hear this whole thing in its entire stupidity. But here she goes, starting to lecture us how the press is under attack, how the media is, just trying to do their jobs. And it's just a sad, sad state of affairs. Here she is. I backed it up a little bit so we could hear a certain part of this again. Here we go.
That it was altered, that it was false, that they had placed gang signs, tattoos on him that weren't real. And so I would really, the press right now, we are absolutely under attack. Our job is always to have our true north, to make sure that we're presenting balanced news.
This is not
and
satire.
Making sure that we are not putting folks that are potentially in danger, and having that representation of those pictures in the background. We can't allow that to basically for us to carry the water of potentially innocent people.
You carry the water of the administration, the previous administration that created this nonsense. In fact, if I had to venture a guess, I would say that the previous administration, the reason that those pictures were in the background, the vast majority of those, potentially even all of those in the background, Ms. Kumar, was because you didn't hold the previous administration accountable for anything. You let them play games. You didn't hold them accountable for when the border was wide open. You let them press the lie. By the way, it's been proven. Can we all agree now, 100 days into Trump's second term, that the administration, the previous administration, had the power to stop the madness along the southern border at any moment? They chose not to do it. You, by the way, maybe not you specifically, Ms. Kumar, but you're speaking here on behalf of all the media who you claim are under attack. Oh, under attack. You guys are a bunch of whips. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? If you're a man, I would say man up. I don't know what to say to you. Toughen up. You got to be kidding me. You can't be serious. You guys are not the victims here. You're the ones who have created this scenario to begin with, or at least you have been complicit. You hid all sorts of things about Joseph Robinette bribery. You didn't report on all sorts of things. You allowed people within the deep state, which I've got stuff in here, in the stack of stuff, to provide further evidence that there is, in fact, a deep state that is working. There are rogue agents that are disregarding lawful constitutional orders of the President of the United States, that are working in the executive branch, that are not doing what they need to be doing. They are doing things that they know the president does not want them to do. They are operating of their own free will. They're not choosing to follow the direction the president has set, which he absolutely, by the way, the next president can do the same thing. The next president, be he or she Democrat or Republican or whatever, they've got the same ability to set the agenda as it pertains within the confines of the law, but they can give orders to their executive branch, and if you don't follow those orders, you should be fired. We don't have a fourth branch of government called the bureaucratic state. Now, in all reality, it appears that we do. It appears that we have established now a fourth branch of government which no one can touch, especially if the president can't do anything about it. Why can anybody else when it's technically under the chief executive officer of the the executive branch, the president? It's under his or her purview, under his or her authority. You guys didn't pay any attention, and you had no interest whatsoever in the things that were happening. No interest in Hunter Biden's laptop from hell. No interest in whether the folks the 51 intelligence officers who knew less about intelligence than this little old guy with a radio show in Monrovia, Indiana did. I knew more. How did I know more? Whenever they wrote the article basically saying it was Russian disinformation, how did I know that was a bunch of bunk? And the rest of us average, everyday Americans, us hayseed hicks in flyover country, how did we know that? And you elitists in the media did not. Where was your multiple sources there? How did you get duped into believing something that was a lie there? The list of things that you've been wrong on, categorically wrong, undeniably wrong about, is as long as, I would say, my arm, but that's not long enough. That's not long enough. You guys are routinely wrong, on the wrong side of everything. Deceiving, lying, manipulating, telling half-truths, 92%. I just saw 92% of coverage of President Trump in his second term has been negative, and yet you can't stop him. And yet you claim you're the one. Oh, you precious little delicate flower. You're the ones that are under assault. Give me a break. We don't care. We do not care. We have watched you guys tear apart the fabric of this country long enough. We have watched you lie and deceive and mislead and gaslight for far too long. We do not care. We don't care. We don't care. And to say you're under attack, how about you defend yourself? How about you explain where it is that you're right and where the people who are making allegations against you are wrong? Why don't you do that? Why don't you put your big girl pants on? Why don't the other folks at MSNBC, this guy that I don't even know who he is, that he can put his big boy pants on, or whatever gender you want. You can put on whichever pair of pants you want, but just make sure that they're the big kid pants so you can engage in this discourse like an adult, instead of acting the victim, playing we're under assault charge. The media is under attack. Give me a break. We've had it. We don't care. You're a bunch of babies. You've been causing harm, inflicting harm in this country for a long time. You've been, talk about carrying the water. You've been carrying the water for the previous administration, for the left, for the Democrat Party, for a long, long time now. For a long, long time. Actually, the most recent example is how you've been demanding that Kilmar Abrego Garcia hadn't had the right to be deported, that he wasn't given due process because Trump accused him of violent crimes. He could be deported because he was an illegal alien. You know this. You're conflating things. You're misleading people. You're gaslighting us. Stop with the nonsense. She's got a little bit more to say here.
I recognize live shots are tough, but I would encourage folks to actually make sure that those shots are blurred to the best of your abilities.
Well said. Well said.
Well
Again,
said.
focus
You're
here.
an American hero.
Doing it well. Journalists, it's never been more important.
Now, doing it well. You got to be kidding me. I don't know what planet you have to be from to think that the folks at MSNBC do one iota of real journalism. This is my opinion, but I think that is as close to just an objective truth as anything I say on this program. You can't be serious. You're not real journalists. Now, maybe this appeals to your audience. Maybe this somehow makes them think that you're out there doing your job. They feel sorry for you. I don't know. To the rest of us, it makes you look like clowns because there's not been real journalism in this country on a large scale for, I don't even know. I don't know when I'd have to go back to. I don't think it's happened in my lifetime. I can only speak back to when I started paying attention, which was probably 30 or so years ago. I can count the number of real journalists. I don't want to say on one hand, but not many hands. It doesn't take many hands to count this. It just, the audacity of these folks. It's a lot to behold. Anyway, MSNBC thinks you should blur out the faces. Ask yourself, did they blur out the faces of anyone else who's been arrested? Did they blur out the face of President Trump? Did they acclaim Trump? Were there people on MSNBC's network who claimed Trump was guilty before he had due process? Were there people who claimed that Trump should be more guilty of other things that he's not been convicted of? Are there people who have blown the charges out of proportion? Are there people who have lied about what those of us who have a problem with these trials and so forth, these charges against Trump, have they explained why that is? Have they given the side of the argument to articulate why it is? What about the folks from January 6th? Were you concerned about their due process? I don't remember MSNBC demonstrating the slightest bit of interest in due process for J6 offenders. In fact, many on the left are claiming that those folks should just be, taken out and just whipped, I guess. It's unbelievable what we're subjected to here. To think that you're engaging in journalism, you're delusional. You're absolutely unequivocally delusional. All right, friends, let me talk to you. If you're in sales, if you are in sales, you know that results are what matter. You know that sales is an activity-based business, and no one delivers results like Matt Easton and Easton University. Matt's system is among the best I have ever seen. I've been around this stuff a lot. I stand by what he's doing. It's phenomenal stuff over there. It's practical. It's proven. It's built to help you sell smarter, close faster, and make more money. And friends, it's a good way to get you on the right track. If you're succeeding, to help you have more success. If you're struggling, to help you get to the success that you need. The first step you got to take, and it's on you, is to go to toddhuffshow.com/Easton. That's where you can go to find out more information about the training program. And if you sign up to be a student on that link, Matt Easton will jump on a personal call with you to walk you through your sales challenges, help you get started with the program. Friends, if you follow his system, it is going to pay off. Take that first step today, toddhuffshow.com/Easton. I've got to take a break, my friends. Sit tight, back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Third and final segment of this, the first hour of the program. I want to kind of lead into another example in the media that's out there. Wolf Blitzer at CNN, they're all worked up. They're all upset. They're all worked up that Kash Patel, the FBI, has arrested a judge Here's the statement from Kash Patel. We believe Judge Dugan intentionally misdirected federal agents away from the subject to be arrested in her courthouse, Eduardo Flores Ruiz, allowing the subject, an illegal alien, to evade arrest. Thankfully, our agents chased down the perp on foot, and he's been in custody since. But the judge's obstruction created increased danger to the public. So, Judge Hannah Dugan, out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, has been arrested by the FBI on charges of obstruction after there was evidence that she tried to obstruct the arrest of an illegal immigrant last week. And so this has upset the folks at CNN. What's the FBI doing? Arresting judges. They've got a problem with the FBI arresting judges. They don't have a problem with the government charging a candidate for president of the United States. By the way, President of the United States, Donald Trump. This is, if you ask the average person to explain what Trump was charged with, how he was, what he did wrong, and then ask the average person what this judge, Judge Dugan, allegedly did wrong. The average person can understand this. They can't understand, they cannot explain anything that Trump did wrong. They just call him a bunch of names, convicted felon, everything else, a dictator, a fascist, a Nazi, whatever. But it's pretty obvious. You got someone who should be deported from this country, an illegal alien. The judge knew that this person was going to be detained and deported, and so apparently, according to the allegations, and this, by the way, let's give her due process, but these are the charges. If she's been arrested, by the way, MSNBC, would you blur out her mugshot? If she's been arrested for these charges, it doesn't mean she's been convicted. It doesn't mean that she's not going to get due process. It just means she's been arrested. There's a public mugshot out there. Just crazy stuff. Anyway, so Wolf Blitzer, CNN, is all upset about the judge being arrested by the FBI. Let's listen to this.
Says a U.S. judge has been arrested for obstructing an immigration operation. Let's go live right now to our senior crime and justice correspondent, Caitlin Polan. It's pretty dramatic. What are you learning, Caitlin?
What are you learning?
Truly,
Caitlin?
Wolf, this is something that we have certainly not seen before, but appears to be part of this aggressive approach the Trump administration has toward immigration. What the FBI director, Kash Patel, announced in a social media post just a few minutes ago this morning is that just now, the FBI arrested Judge Hannah Dugan out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, on charges of obstruction after evidence of Judge Dugan obstructing an immigration arrest operation last week. We believe Judge Dugan...
Freeze. If these charges are valid and correct, should she not have been... That's my first question to you, CNN. Should she not have been arrested because she's a judge? Should this be allowed to slide? Should we let people be able to harbor and protect people from being detained by people who are wanted justifiably by law enforcement? Should we allow that to happen in our country? There's more to come here. Here we go.
Intentionally misdirected federal agents away from the subject to be arrested in her courthouse. Eduardo Flores Ruiz is the name that the FBI director puts out there about that subject, allowing the subject to evade arrest. Thankfully, our agents chased down the perp on foot, and he's been in custody since. But the judge's obstruction created increased danger to the public. So that's the FBI director laying out this apparent story and the developments this morning, Wolf, of what is happening with this arrest. We have reached out to the Milwaukee County Circuit Court, which is where the judge sits, Judge Hannah Dugan. They have not responded yet, and there isn't any publicly available information in the court record about this, but it would be a startling development if this judge was arrested as she was working on the bench as a judge handling an immigration case or a case of a person that ICE was also interested in. Wolf?
Yeah.
Okay, so you hear how they frame this. I want to play the rest of this reaction from Wolf and the folks at CNN here. But this is aggressive, unprecedented. This would be just unbelievable that a judge would be arrested for this sort of thing. That's how they do it. Here's some more reaction.
Very dramatic and significant indeed. Caitlin Polan's reporting for us. Thank you very much, Pamela.
Arresting a judge is a very big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Very big
All right, new this morning, a recently unsealed court filing is giving us...
Very big deal. Unprecedented. This is aggressive. The administration, never heard this before. Can't believe this happened. What's the FBI doing? Going after a judge. What's a judge doing here? What about that question? It is amazing to me how people get misled and deceived by these jokers. You know, it's like watching, I don't have time to get into this, but I remember Seinfeld in a joke on his program talked about when you watch, say, one of the animal shows, Nat Geo Wild or whatever, and you're watching, say, the documentaries about the lions, and you watch the lions hunt the wildebeest, and you're cheering for the lions because you know that lion's hungry. Oh, go get the lion, get the wildebeest lion. You've got to feed your cubs, all this stuff. But if the documentary is about the wildebeest and how much the wildebeest struggles and to survive and all this stuff in the savannah and so forth, the lions are chasing the wildebeest and you're rooting for the wildebeest. Get away, wildebeest, go protect your family, go be with your friends. This is how they do it. They just pick a side, which is always the side opposite you, by the way, which is always the side that's opposite the Republican Party, decency and common sense. And that's all they talk about from that perspective. I'm out of time here, my friends. Gotta go. See you in the next hour. SDG.